What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name Charles Bukowski? Alcohol, cigarettes, misanthropy, misogyny. But what if behind all of this there lies a deep and very wise philosophy of a man who didn't give up in the face of life's obstacles? A man who wasn't afraid to be who he was and show it to the world proudly. Bukowski once said, "I wasn't a misanthrope, and I wasn't a misogynist, but I liked being alone. It felt good to sit alone in a small space and smoke and drink. I had always been good company for myself." His philosophy is easiest to understand by analyzing his life. So let's first take a look at his personal life, which was undoubtedly filled with monotony, depression, and unhappiness. His childhood was filled with suffering and undeserved pain, both emotional and physical. His father regularly mistreated him, and some would even say he tortured him. As we would later see, this had a profound impact on him, shaping his view of the world and his writing. Even here we can see that despite his hardships, Bukowski found ways to cope with his pain and transform it into something meaningful. All of this points to the strength of his spirit, which could have easily surrendered entirely to alcohol, drugs, and other distractions, but instead he chose to use his life for something more, something sincere, dear, and precious to his heart. As he famously said, "Find what you love and let it kill you." After his family immigrated to United States, his problems only grew bigger. Now, not only was he enduring violence at home, but he was also mocked and rejected by his peers at school for the smallest things like his accent, his clothes, and other trivial matters. His troubles piled up and his self-awareness grew, which led to greater and greater isolation and loneliness. As tragic as it all was, it also served as a catalyst for his inner creative genius, which the world would eventually be gifted with. While not always the case, the irony of beauty and art is that it often comes from the darkest, ugliest depths of the human soul. His first steps in literature were undoubtedly almost a complete failure. After finally managing to publish some of his work at the age of 23, the story almost ended there, just with the publication. Too many attempts led to barely a few published works, none of which really took off. This led to his frustration and anger directed at the publishing process, after which he stopped writing for an entire decade, a period he himself referred to as his 10-year drunk. However, we can see that this also contributed to the development of his resilience and determination, which were crucial parts of his worldview and philosophy. He did publish some works during that time, but none of them gained much traction. Most of the time, he lived for his alcohol and worked blue-collar jobs, simply surviving. After a hospitalization that nearly ended in death, something changed. As is often the case with people who stare death in the face, he quit his job at the post office and began writing poetry. He decided to dedicate himself to his art, writing and publishing more and more works, but again, nothing really took off, and he was forced to return to his post office job. Yet this time, something was different as well. While working at the post office, he used every free moment to write, to do what he loved, even though nothing really succeeded at first. It wasn't until his 50s that his popularity began to rise. Publishers started recognizing him, and his success slowly began to bloom. Every seed he had planted in the last 30 years started to sprout. He could finally start living off his honest and hard-earned work. Clearly, one of his greatest virtues was persistence and inexhaustible resilience. Deep down, he knew what fulfilled him, and despite a world that constantly knocked him down, he refused to accept a life without writing and continued to fight for what he loved. He wrote, If you're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, and maybe even your mind. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It could mean freezing on a park bench. It could mean jail. It could mean derision. It could mean mockery, isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the others are a test of your endurance, of how much you really want to do it. And you'll do it despite rejection and the worst thoughts, and it will be better than anything else you can imagine. If you're going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You will be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It's the only good fight there is. So why does such a man tell us not to try? His gravestone even reads, "Don't try." But what does that really mean? Clearly he tried. He certainly did. In one letter, in response to someone's question, "What do you do? How do you write, create?" he answered, "You don't try. That's very important. Not to try. Either for Cadillacs, creation, or immortality. You wait, and if nothing happens, you wait some more. It's like a bug high on the wall. You wait for it to come to you. When it gets close enough, you reach out, slap it out, and kill it. Or if you like its looks, you make a pet out of it." Or as he wrote to one friend, "We work too hard. We try too hard. Don't try. Don't work. It's there. It's been looking right at us, itching to kick out of the closed womb. There's been too much direction. It's all free. We needn't be told. Classes are for asses. Writing a poem is as easy as beating your meat or drinking a bottle of beer." So he advises us to stop overthinking, to stop considering attempts and backup plans. If you have to force yourself to try something, if life without it doesn't scare you, then it probably means you don't really care about it, that maybe you don't really want it after all. And if you don't care about it, why bother? Bukowski pushes us out of our comfort zones and teaches us that if we truly want something, if we truly love something, then there is no need to try. We simply need to surrender to it and do it. Let it consume us, possess us, and kill us. His poem, "Oh Yes," perfectly illustrates why we should start working on what fuels our fire right this minute. There are worse things than being alone, but it often takes decades to realize this. And most often, when you do, it's too late. There's nothing worse than too late. Creativity isn't something we search for. It's something we either have or don't have. His philosophy applies to all other things and decisions in our lives as well. Usually in moments when we pause and pay attention to what's around us and within us, the thing we truly need finds us. Bukowski urges us to live authentically, to, like him, refuse to kill ourselves for social norms, to live without regrets. If we have a hobby or a passion, we shouldn't suppress it or hide it, but rather let it live and flourish, and show it to the world without hesitation. The world will judge us anyway, whether we are doing something we love or not. So why not let the world judge us for something that truly represents our soul?